Let us pay homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Let us take the three refuges. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Okay, we shall now chant the verses to observe the 5 precepts. Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sura meraya majja pamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Namo Buddhaya. Good morning to everyone. Today we are going to share insights from the Prajna Paramita Hidayah Sutra. In English, this is often called the Heart Sutra, and the direct translation of Prajna Paramita Hidayah is the heart Hidayah of the perfection Paramita of wisdom, Prajna. This sharing is a non-sectarian study of this Heart Sutra, translated or edited by the Venerable Xuan Zhang. He very brilliantly, in just 260 Chinese characters, collated the Buddha's teachings on insight meditation, the 5 khandas, non-self, dependent origination, 4 noble truths, emptiness, and most importantly, how to utilize this information to be fully liberated. Prajna Paramita is not translated to Chinese but transliterated. Hence it becomes Po Re Po Lo Mi To, Sing Heart. Po Re Prajna Po Lo Mi To Paramita. Sing refers to the mind, our mind. Hence, Prajna Paramita is, in other words, the perfect way of seeing the nature of reality. I would like to raise to our attention that Heart Sutra, so commonly called, is actually not a sutra, and it was not titled as a sutra in all the known Sanskrit manuscripts, but rather as a dharani, a zhou. And a dharani is actually a mnemonic device that is used to help us remember huge amounts of information. The Venerable Xuan Zhang appears to be the first to call this a sutra. The earliest extant text of his work is actually a stone carving dated 661 CE, 3 years before the Venerable passed away. Now, this work was done in 649 CE, and it is actually a roadmap, brilliantly structured, applying the Buddha's teachings to guide us on how to practice, rather than words taken verbatim from the Buddha. It is highly condensed, so highly condensed that often a single character would represent an entire teaching. So it demands understanding of the Dhamma before one can understand these 260 characters, which are designed to shatter our strongest and most beloved delusions, our strongest attachments. The words are all very cryptic. If one is reading the Heart Sutra in Chinese for the first time, it will sound crazy because it just keeps saying no, 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 wu, wu, wu. If one is trained in the basics of Buddhism, it sounds even crazier because it appears to negate everything. But all these are for a purpose, as we will see. There are many translations of the Heart Sutra in English, all available on the internet, but none have the beauty and the depth that the Chinese version edited by the Venerable Xuanzang has. The very first 3 characters in this sutra, Guan Zi Zai, teaches us the very starting point in our cultivation. Guan is to observe mindfully. Zi, Ziji, the self, ourself, our body and mind complex. Zai, as in xian zai, at every moment. So the very first starting point is to train to observe our minds at every moment. This is right mindfulness. And this is the way to pursue the perfect enlightenment. Using right mindfulness in every moment, we look into our minds to see our thoughts, our perceptions, and how our mind works. In walking the path, the understanding of the Dhamma is not just theoretical, but from direct observation. Now, the second and third character, if taken together, is Zhi Zai. Zhi Zai literally means unbounded. This is a state of freedom, ease, happiness. A state whereby you are liberated. Zhi Zai. This is what we want. This is what we all aim for. And the first 3 characters taken together, Guan Zhi Zai, in Chinese, as put out by the late Venerable Xuanzang, refers to Avalokiteshwara Bodhisattva. This is an interesting part of this sutra because the Venerable Xuanzang disagreed with the earlier translations of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva as Guan Shi Yin. The earlier translations by the Venerable Kumarajiva, for example, use Guan Shi Yin, which became very popular, listening to the sounds of the world. But the Venerable Xuanzang disagreed because the word lock, avalok, lock, to him, this Sanskrit clearly refers to looking instead of hearing. Hence, he changed it very characteristically in his work to Guan Zhi Zai. Guan Zhi Zai refers to looking at the ultimate nature of things. And of course, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva It is also the embodiment of compassion. In the pursuit of perfect wisdom, we have to live with loving kindness and compassion. We often see this iconography. This is called 自在观音像. 自在 illustrating the ease, the freedom, the happiness, and the state of boundlessness or liberation. I hope now we understand why we often will see this imagery, which is iconographic of Guan Yin, but actually telling us a lesson of ease, freedom, happiness, boundlessness, and liberation. Pu Sa comes from Bodhi and Sattva, the being who is intent on achieving enlightenment. Now, this being who is intent on achieving enlightenment starts with Guan Zi Zai, looking mindfully at his own or her own mind at every moment. And what do they see? Zhao Jian Wu Yin Jie Kong. They will see with profound contemplation as they walk this path. Profound, sun, deep cultivation, contemplation, living the Dhamma, the teachings, then we sing, truly walk or cultivate the way. And what do we see when you do this? Zhao Jian Wu Yin Jie Kong. That the 5 khandas are empty. So what in the self, when one contemplates very seriously, is that you will see an image created by the Rupa Nama, our 5 aggregates, of processes that are actually ceaselessly in motion, that we deludedly misconstrued as a solid, independent entity that we identify as I. Now, the 5 khandas or aggregates consist of how we perceive the form, the physical structure, or in Malay and Sanskrit, the rupa. Sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness are the 4 components of how our mind perceives and, more importantly, label a nama, a name. Precisely in Sanskrit and Malay, we give it an identity. We give this perceived rupa, the form, a nama, a name, hence creating an identity, and in the process, separateness and plurality, a duality of now I versus them. Zhao Jian is to look, to see, to illuminate clearly, and you will realize Wu Yin, the 5 khandas, Jie Kong, are empty. The self, as we perceive, is not an inherent, concrete, or absolute entity. And this is the lion's roar of the sutra. We must see the emptiness of the self, shattering our strongest and most beloved delusion and attachment, hence transforming suffering. Ego simply means I in Latin. In English, it means a very prideful nature. And of course, those familiar with Sigmund Freud's concepts will know that ego is that part of the psychic which mediates between the subconscious and the it. But in Buddhism, in the Buddha Dhamma, it refers to the delusion of an independent self, the Atman, which refers to a concept or a belief that there is a permanent I for all time, for all eternity. But the Buddha, in his great wisdom, saw that there is no such permanent substance. Within this I, there is only ceaseless change and transformation. Hence the word an in front of the word Atman, Anatman. Anatman in Pali is anatta. or no permanent, unchanging, eternal self. Instead, we are gushing streams of formless water, like gushing streams of formless water. So, activities flowing endlessly. Those before us extend back into the midst of time, and we too will become those after us. From one arises another. From one we form another. It is not a permanent structure going eternally from life to life to life, but ceaseless activities flowing on and on. A Lego man on a boat. I saw this in one of the monasteries in Thailand, and it illustrates this principle that within the ego that we call I is actually just many, many components of activities strung together in a complex. And we are all trying to sit on a boat to cross from the shore of ignorance to the shore of wisdom. This word, kong, emptiness, describes the corelessness of all things. The five khandas are empty, means that what was seen by us as a solid entity labeled self has no innate unchanging substance, no permanence, no inherent or independent eternal existence. Everything is produced from causes and is connected to and conditioned by everything else in a very complex web of cause and effect. Nothing exists independently in an unchanging state. This was the discovery by the Buddha. In the first noble truth, we learn pancha upadana khanda dukkha. The five clinging aggregates is the basis of suffering. We learn that suffering, dis-ease, disappointment, and dissatisfaction is present whenever we have clinging, upadana. We cannot cling or rely on what is impermanent, unstable, unreliable, changing, and non-self. When we do this, inevitably we are going to have dis-ease, disappointment, dissatisfaction, and suffering, for these are eternally changing. Hence, material and sensual happiness is fleeting. The five grasping aggregates or five aggregates of clinging summarizes dukkha in the first noble truth. The Buddha compared our physical structures to a lump of foam, our feeling to a bubble, perception to a mirage, mental formations to a plantain trunk, which is like a banana trunk, which has no hardwood, and consciousness to an illusion. And he asks us, what essence, monks, could there be in a lump of foam, a bubble, a mirage, a plantain trunk, in an illusion? Impermanence, that changeability, that instability and unreliability is the cause of the misery in our world. Now, the second noble truth teaches us the cause of our suffering is craving, the emotional desire to want objects, sensual pleasures, wanting eternity and permanence. That's why people aim, hope, crave for eternal life, eternity. To see the causes of suffering, to end the causes of suffering, to stop the causes of suffering, we must see the emptiness of the five khandas, obtaining insightful understanding to the three characteristics of anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering, anatta, non-self, and hence realizing the futility of craving, clinging, and greed. Hence, with this, we will 度一切苦厄, transforming all suffering and distress. 度一切苦厄. Now, when one sees the truth of the emptiness, the result is the transformation of the way we think. We awaken. There will still be pain, suffering, and distress, but it will lessen. It will become progressively less as we understand why. Our body will still age and degenerate, and our interactions with society may still result in undesirable and unpleasant consequences. But now we understand instability, unreliability, we understand why, and we adapt. We learn not to be taken in by the appearance of things. Freedom from suffering comes from not clinging to ever-changing, slippery objects and relying on it as a source of happiness. We know this will only give rise to disappointment. To want happiness, we ironically have to let go of wanting. O Sariputta, 舍利子，色不异空，空不异色，色就是空，空就是色。Form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form. And this is restated. Form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness is exactly form. This is probably the best known line in the Heart Sutra, and possibly the most enigmatic. Form, the first of the five khandas, the physic, the rupa, includes all external objects which are perceived by our senses. Now, all form that is perceived is empty, like a drum with no solid core. It is constantly changing. What we see is not what it is. It is not solid, independent, and unchanging. With this knowledge of reality, the forms that we perceive actually exist as a temporary composite object. Hence, form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness is exactly form. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. Let's take a watch as an example. A watch is empty of an inherent self, for within all its springs and gears, nothing is inherently a watch. But the combination of it all, this composite, makes a watch with a function that tells time. Like our body and mind composite, it is a complex of aggregates that is empty of any individual permanent self. 受想行识亦复如是. The rest of the five khandas, sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness, is exactly like this. The four aggregates of how our mind perceive and label, giving things a nama, a name, an identity, is similarly empty of any concrete existence. So, to be enlightened is to awake from the delusions of our thinking. We function in an ephemeral environment. Everything changes. All things are indeed real. It is just not in the way we think it is. Hence, the sutra strongly emphasizes form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness is exactly form. Emptiness is not nihilistic. On the contrary, it helps us to function well as we now understand the ceaseless changing nature of things. The concept of nihilism, that things do not exist in any sense and that nothing continues after death, and the concept of eternalism, that there is existence in objects that will exist unchangingly forever, are both rejected in the Buddhist teachings. The Heart Sutra clearly attests to this. 是处法空相, 处法 everything, 处法 that is perceived by us is empty of an unchanging nature. Knowing that all phenomena is empty of an unchanging nature, we now have insight into 不生不灭, 不垢不净, 不增不减. Nothing in reality is created or destroyed, is defiled or pure. Nothing is added or lost. Now this is pre-university physics. We learn matter and energy merely transforms from one state to another in an ever-flowing flux. The selflessness and beginningless nature of all things. This famous equation by Einstein tells us how energy and mass is related to each other. Now, with understanding emptiness, 是故空中无色. With understanding emptiness now, we know that there is no form, 无受想行识. There's no sensation, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. There are no coordinates which are permanent by which we can define selfhood, as the psychophysical activities we see as self are constantly changing. They are there, but they are ceaselessly changing streams of energy. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, 无眼耳鼻舌身意, no eyes, ears, no tongue, body, and mind. Our sense organs provide us information from our environment, but we misinterpret the data. So delusion is truth, as perceived by the senses of an unenlightened person. Truth is delusions now seen as what it truly is by an enlightened mind. 无色声香味触法. No form, sound, smell, taste, object of touch, and object of thought. Now all our grasping manifested in our attachments and aversions is generated and developed because of the identification and activities of our 5 khandas. The 6 perceived objects of form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and object of thought by our 6 senses. They are constantly changing. They are empty. But we perceive them as what we would like to see them. It is distorted by our wishes, our fears, our opinions. We will realize with reflection that even our objects of thoughts, even our thoughts, are just passing images that arise because of causes and conditions. They are not I. It is not I think, therefore I am. Now, looking at this in a little dim light, one might identify it as a snake instead of rope. This is a commonly used illustration for this principle. But someone might say, hold on, my body clearly exists. What is this teaching saying? Now, with the realization of emptiness, your eye, ear, nose, etc. do not exist in the way you conceive of it. No eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, the sutra says. Can the I exist by itself and function independently? If we are to take the eyes out of your body-mind complex, can that I see anything? Can it function? Similarly for the ear, nose, tongue, etc. No, none of them can, not even one. None can function independently. They can only function as a composite complex. Hence, they are empty, Kong. And yes, while it exists, it is not by itself a functional, independent entity. If separated from the composite mass, the I becomes a functionless lump of tissue. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, 无眼界乃至无疑世界. When you understand emptiness, then you will realize that the 6 consciousness of eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose, tongue, touch, mind consciousness is similarly empty and ceaselessly changing. Hence, now you realize that all the elements of our experience that we had just stated, the so-called 18 dhatus, the 6 sense organs, the 6 sense objects, the sixth sense consciousness, all the 18 elements of our experience are empty. Therefore, if we seek refuge in them, it is inherently dissatisfying, and recognizing this, we refrain from latching onto things as I, my, or mine. In the Sunya Sutta, the Venerable Ananda asked the Buddha, "It is said that the world is empty. The world is empty, Lord. In what respect is it said that the world is empty?" The Buddha replied, "Insofar as it is empty of a self or anything pertaining to a self. Thus it is said, Ananda, that the world is empty." The Buddha also taught in the Dhammapada, Sabbe Dhamma, small d, anatta. Small d refers to phenomena. All phenomena are non or not self. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, 无无明以无无明尽，乃至无老死以无老死尽。无明 ignorance, 老死 old age and death. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, there is no ignorance and also no ending of ignorance, up to no old age and death, and also no ending of old age and death. You will recognize that this is the first and the last part of dependent origination. This part refers to the 12 links of dependent origination. When enlightened to the truth, there is no more ignorance, wu wu ming. And you will also realize that ultimately there is no being, no concrete person, no self that is unchanging to be ignorant or to end ignorance. You will now realize no one to age and die. There is no one, 不增不减，不生不灭. Dependent origination teaches us that all phenomena are a result of causes and conditions. They are interdependent on each other and exist and occur only because of their relationship with other phenomena. They are without self-entity. They are empty of any inherent existence. Nothing ever exists entirely alone. Everything is in relation to everything else. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, 无苦集灭道. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, there is no suffering, no source of suffering, no annihilation, even no path. This, of course, you will realize refers to the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths teaches us the nature of suffering, its cause, the path to end suffering, and attain nirvana. On reaching enlightenment, there is no more psychological suffering, stress, and greed. The Buddha reached enlightenment at the age of 35. His mind became liberated. He had no more psychological suffering, stress, and greed. With final nirvana, when the enlightened being dies or passes on, there is in addition no more physical suffering, as now the physical form has ceased and there is no more physical form to be reborn. From the enlightened viewpoint, even the path is conceptual, for no unchanging entity had walked the path, only the flux of activities. From the Visuddhimagga, we are familiar with this gatha. For there is suffering, but none who suffers. Doing exists, although there is no doer. Extinction is, but no extinguished person. Although there is a path, there is no goer. This is a very nice poem teaching the very same concept. An awakened mind knows a lot. An unawakened mind cannot express the thoughts of an awakened mind. He can at best present his incomplete view, and hopefully without critical errors. So all teachings point towards the truth that needs to be self-realized, as language inadequately express the insights of an awakened mind, given the complexity of reality. So we must not mistaken the finger for the moon. We are looking for the truths. Do not be distracted or misled or be attached to by the finger which tries to describe the truth. Breaking the myths of wisdom and attainment. When you understand the emptiness of self, or what need is there to egoistically maintain pride, position, attainment, or a high or higher level of wisdom and knowledge? Hence, the sutra teaches us, 无知以无得. Therefore, with understanding emptiness, there is no wisdom, no attainment. Conceit fades. Maintaining the attitude of a beginner is ideal, eager, humble, ready to learn. Discarding the baggage of misconception and culture easily. No matter at what stage of our training, we should try our best to maintain the attitude of a beginner. We need to be rid of attachments, including the attachment to attainment, results, and knowledge. 以无所得故，心无过碍, having nothing to attain, with no hindrance in the mind. This is an important concept, teaching us that we need to let go of the concept of I have attained, I am someone, I am so and so. Let go of this concept. The attitude of being a beginner with a mind like a sponge, always ready to learn, always ready to adapt, is the best attitude. Any gain or attainment is just a passing thought, as ultimately there is no big, no concrete person, no permanent self to achieve anything. Any gain or attainment is just a concept that is fleeting too. Let us look back at the times where we think we had achieved something, at the times where we think we had scored something. It is only a fleeting moment in time. It is only a fleeting moment that disappears very rapidly. In cultivation, we act without thoughts of the person doing the work, nor the magnitude or return of the work done. 无过爱故，无有恐怖. No hindrance, thus no fear. We just do our best. We do not need to worry about achieving, not achieving, at what stage am I, at what yana am I. All that is irrelevant. We just do our best. Nirvana is not something far away. Nirvana is present at the moment of awakening. Where we keep on planting the causes, karma ensures that the result will inevitably arise. We are exhorted to be non-attached to results and let the results take care of itself. Whoever can see this no longer needs anything to attain, see no more obstacles in their mind, overcome all fear, destroy all wrong perceptions. He or she is freed. Happiness. 远离颠倒梦想，究竟涅槃。远离, to leave far behind. The right view of things is needed. 颠倒, to overturn all our misconceptions, delusions, attachments, clingings. Very importantly, a clinging to a self, a clinging to attachments, clinging to ego. 梦想, all these are just illusions, dreams, created by our sense impression. As I said, if you look back at your past achievement, you will see it was like a passing dream, a movie. Shattering delusions through the awakening of the mind, one 究竟涅槃, is in supreme nirvana, the state of complete and final cessation of greed and craving, hatred and ignorance. the state of supreme happiness. Live well, happily and fully. The Buddha teaches us, the Sutta teaches us, all Buddhas of the past, present, and future live attaining perfect wisdom and thus perfect awakened enlightenment. Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi is transliterated. Anuttara means the highest perfect enlightenment, Samyak Sambodhi. Now the Dharma is the boat for us to use to cross from ignorance to awakening, from suffering, very importantly, to happiness. As we walk this path at every stage, we must be getting more and more happy. Otherwise, something is seriously wrong. Wu, no, or none, or none. This word conveys the principle of no grasping, no attachment. Like a mirror, one receives and relinquishes all that goes in front of it without grasping or clinging. We function calmly, joyfully, full-heartedly doing our best. We transcend the pleasant, unpleasant dichotomy and the futile efforts of resisting the monsters and holding on to the angels. Now, if you reflect on it, all of life depends on the fact of emptiness. Ultimately, we are all connected. We are all interdependent. We are all changing from one state to another, neither created nor destroyed, but becoming. We are always ceaselessly becoming something. And hence we can evolve to the highest mental state precisely because there is no permanent self. If indeed there is a permanent self, then we will not be able to evolve to a better being, a better mind state. Emptiness invites us to see the singularity of nature. Down, down, down at the molecular level. Everything from the tree to the human to the animal, they are essentially identical. We are all interconnected. We are all ceaselessly changing. This is a message of the Heart Sutra. But we need to go beyond all concepts to be liberated. Form and emptiness are strategic understandings for us to use to achieve freedom and happiness. They should be realized, used, and mastered as needed to achieve the liberation of boundlessness, 自在, self and not self, plurality and singularity. They are processes for us to know, tools in our daily lives. They are not topics for debate because both are needed for effective function and happiness. Remember, the Dhamma is a boat, a vehicle. This knowledge is a vehicle for us to use to be unbounded for supreme happiness. Now, while some may claim that only their version of the truth is the truth and only that they are right, the Buddha insisted that each person must discover the truth for himself. Truth does not need to be defended. The cryptic language of the Heart Sutra forces us to reflect deeply before we can unravel its message. Each wu or no points to a different facet of emptiness, from the emptiness of the self to the emptiness of our senses to the emptiness of external form, etc. Each wu or no forces you to think. To understand emptiness demands that you perceive objects and ideas without prejudice, with right mindfulness. Right mindfulness, as you know, is 真念. Nian has the word now or jin at the top and xing or mind at the bottom. Remember, you must know what is happening in your mind at every moment. Remember the very start? 观自在. Observe your present state of mind so that you can ultimately achieve liberation. 自在, unbounded state. Now the Heart Sutra is often used like a mantra. A mantra is a collection of words that people keep in mind constantly for protection. But how does it protect one? It protects one when our lives are in line with the Dhamma. You are protected when your life is in line with the Dhamma. Therefore, know that Prajna Paramita is the great mantra, the wisdom mantra, the unsurpassed mantra, the supreme mantra. Note the word, know that Prajna Paramita is the great mantra. It does not refer to a last line or any line. It refers to Prajna Paramita, perfect wisdom. This reminds you of the heart of the Buddhist teachings every time you chant or contemplate this. The mantra is not the line at the end. It is the entire text of 260 characters. The mantra at the last line is the final puzzle for you to unlock to liberation. As noted earlier, early translations of the Heart Sutra were titled Prajna Paramita Dharani, not a Jing or Sutra. And no extant Sanskrit text has the word Sutra in the title. It has the word Dharani or Hidayah. So when successfully applied, when we successfully understand and use the perfect wisdom, it will completely remove all suffering. This is truth, not deception. A past great teacher had explained that the line at the end, the mantra, encapsulates the entire teaching of the Heart Sutra. The line at the end says, Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhiswaha. Translated to English, it says, gone, gone, gone beyond, gone altogether beyond, awakening, or hail. Remember, a dharani or a mantra is a mnemonic device. It is meant to help us remember, and it contains vast amounts of knowledge or information in highly condensed phrases. Gate, the first gone. Gate, the very first gone. Have we realized the realization to go beyond the emptiness of the self, which is right at the very start of this sutra? Have we realized the emptiness of body, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness? The Rupanama. We are the product of a temporary gathering of conditions that are constantly changing. But this does not deny our existence. It cuts through our strong attachment to the illusion of a permanent self and atta. This was at the very start. Realizing the emptiness of what we consider as ourself. The second gate, gone. Have we the realization to go beyond the emptiness of all phenomena? The six sense organs, the six sense object, the six consciousness was next in line in the sutra. Everything that we see, perceive, touch, smell, hear, own, like, dislike is empty. Nothing has an independent existence and is constantly changing. This cuts through the illusion that there is anything reliable or stable that we can depend on for comfort and happiness. Paragate. Remember, gate gate, paragate. Paragate means gone beyond. Have we the realization to go beyond? The third part, the emptiness of concepts. Remember, the sutra talks of the 12 links of dependent origination. It talks of the Four Noble Truths. We had gone through this. When we truly understand emptiness, we will rise above duality. The chains of our grasping and attachments, even to concepts, even to Dharma and Adharma, are cut asunder. When you understand the Dhamma is like a raft, and that you should let go even of positive things, then how much more so should you let go of negative things? All phenomena, including concepts, should not be clung to as I, my, or mine. Beautifully expressed in Sabbe Dhamma Nalam Abhinivesaya. Nang Parasamgate, gone altogether. Parasamgate, gone altogether beyond. Then Bodhi, but an awakening. Now the message of the Heart Sutra is not just emptiness, but going beyond the concepts of self, form, and emptiness. Disengaging selflessness, craving, conceit, and conceptual prisons to be liberated. That is our aim, 自在, nirvana, liberation. Enlightenment is awakening to the truth, to be unbounded, going altogether beyond, freed from divine and human bondages. This is the supreme happiness, sama vimutti, right liberation. Hence you can see that the meaning and essence of the Heart Sutra is condensed in this one phrase, gate gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhi swaha, for us to unlock. When you are deluded, a rose is a solid entity, independent, plurality. Now when you start to learn the truth, you realize that a rose is now not just a rose, but a composite of many non-rose elements, water, soil, sun, etc. Singularity. Now, when you have insight into reality, into emptiness, and going beyond it, a rose is now seen as an impermanent rose, whose beauty is to be seen and happily enjoyed, while it lasts in its empty, ephemeral, non-self state, functioning with plurality amidst the understanding of singularity. Transcendent wisdom is the capacity to be fully aware to the reality of things. It is transcendent because it rises above the noise and delusion of daily life, so that the reality of life, the beauty of life, the connectedness of life, the singularity of life is seen clearly. Knowing emptiness, we live mindfully in the present moment, 观自在, interacting with metta, karuna, loving kindness, and compassion as modeled by the icon of Avalokiteshwara, serving with mudita, joy, and finally be in the unbound state of upekkha, equanimity, as we know now that nothing in reality is created or destroyed, defiled or pure, added or lost. When you understand this truly well, you will understand what is upekkha and how to apply upekkha. Knowing the ephemeral nature of all conditioned things, we do not depend on it for our happiness. All conditioned phenomena are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, shadows, like dewdrops and a lightning flash. Contemplate them thus. You are now freed. Thank you for inviting me. I thank many teachers for the very profound lessons within the Heart Sutra. Any misinterpretation is entirely my lack of understanding. This talk was first given many years ago in Singapore, 2002, and then it has since been edited, repeated, re-given many times over the last 2 decades. It has since been edited as hopefully my understanding improved. I want to thank everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share.
Dedication of merits. Let us invite all sentient beings to participate in our acquired merits. Ettavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Ettavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Ettavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Let us dedicate the merits of participating in this wholesome Dhamma activity to our departed relatives and friends. Idang me tinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me tinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me tinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.